So we had barely cleared the driveway before an argument erupted from the back seat. I'm Hollis, and I am 4 years old. Hollis is my 4-year-old daughter, and we were on our way to watch fireworks at Lake Junaluska just the other week. And my wife Andrea and I were more than just a little confused because our daughter was the only person sitting in the back seat. But she was clearly very, very, very perturbed. And so sitting in the driver's side seat, I adjusted the rearview mirror, and what I saw was a highly determined Hollis sitting in the back seat, glaring at the tablet balanced on her knees, over and over declaring, I am Hollis and I am 4 years old. It sounded like she was reciting like a sort of like legal brief or maybe issuing some kind of formal decree. And then I heard it, a chipper automated voice responding back to her. Please ask a grown-up for help. And then everything made sense. Because a few days earlier, Andrea had downloaded an educational app onto one of our tablets. It's one of those apps that teaches like spelling and math, and it has puzzles and little games and things. And we downloaded it onto one of the tablets so that Hollis would have something to do when we're driving back and forth on little road trips. And like any app, it comes with additional things that you can buy, fancy little add-ons, of course, behind a paywall. And so if you tap the wrong icon enough times, that chipper little automated voice will say, please ask a grown-up for help. But Hollis, my sweet, sweet dragon of a child, she took that as a direct challenge because in her mind, she thought that the robot voice was trying to tell her that she was not old enough to play the game. And so my daughter, she was ready to go to court, armed with absolutely every credential that she could muster about why she was, in fact, old enough. She informed the automated voice that she knew how to write her name. She testified that she could stay up really, really, really late. And she even told that chipper automated voice that her daddy lets her watch Batman. I'm Hollis and I am 4 years old. And with each impassioned plea, that chipper little automated voice would retort back, please ask a grown-up for help. Now for clarification, Andrea and I did try to help her. We tried to get her to hand us the tablet, but she was insistent that she did not need mommy or daddy's help because that is just what the robot voice wanted. Instead, she wanted to do it all by herself because she was old enough. And that was our ride to Lake Junaluska. Our determined 4-year-old versus the pre-recorded sentence programmed somewhere out in Silicon Valley. She continued to insist and plead and reason with that voice that couldn't hear her. And that small little human poured untold energy into a conversation that was really never a conversation at all. Luckily for us, fireworks are more interesting than arguing with a robot, or we might still be there to this very day. This Sunday, we are starting a series looking at the book of Proverbs. And for context, the book of Proverbs is an anthology of wisdom sayings. Most of the book is comprised of short, almost fortune cookie-esque like statements that are meant to share wisdom about everyday life. And in all honesty, it is an interesting hodgepodge of wisdom statements. Some of the verses in Proverbs are comforting, some of them are puzzling, and some of them are just downright odd. But our goal throughout this series is to spend some time with different proverbs that exist, these wisdom sayings. Our goal will be to dust them off, hold them up to the light, to today's modern challenges, and ask together, do these words of wisdom Do they still ring true? And we begin this work this Sunday by examining the words from Proverbs chapter 26, verse 4. Do not answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you will become as foolish as they are. It's a piece of wisdom that is both short and sharp, and in a fun, sort of adorable way, it likens to Hollis, arguing in the backseat of our minivan, spending half an hour going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with an automated message. But in a less fun and much less adorable way, I feel like this proverb captures the current state of our society. Because we are living in a highly divided and highly argumentative season within our country. We inhabit comment threads built for outrage, news cycles collaborated for conflict, and a continued tension that you could almost cut with a knife. I don't know if you feel this way, but some days talking just feels like continually to run into a brick wall. And so here's the challenge within this time and this season of tension, because we do need to continue the work of finding space for conversation. We need to strive for ways to bring people together. I think that most people would agree with that. But it is equally important to practice wisdom in not giving our time and our energy and our sanity to people and to entities that are not seeking those same things. Because sometimes we can look like Hollis, insistently trying to have conversation in spaces and with people who are just sort of operating on automated messages, when dialogue lacks openness and shared compassion, when it has been programmed by ideology or by algorithm, when it ignores efforts of good faith. Simply put, we can exhaust ourselves with dead-end conversations that just leave us drained and depleted. And so it is equally important during this heavy season that even as we try to find common ground, to also practice self-love and doing no harm. And we do this by recognizing the difference between fruitful conversations and the times where we just simply need to disengage. Because as we dust off Proverbs 26:4 and we set it beside the noise of 2025, it offers us 2 points of wisdom. And the first point of wisdom is blunt. Not every conversation is worth having. I repeat, not every conversation is worth having. And at first, that statement might sound jarring because we've been taught, especially in church, that dialogue is holy ground and that good communication can heal any rift. And for the most part, that is very true. And honestly, Proverbs 26:4, it doesn't deny that, but it does add an important side note. Communication requires 2 parties. And if one of those parties is engaging in what the Proverbs calls foolish arguments, then that conversation is not going to bear fruit. If someone shows up with the intention of just sort of regurgitating automated messages, it does not matter what we say in that moment, because we are just sort of engaging in a performance art of someone else's certainty. And the second point of wisdom digs even deeper. Because 26:4 says, when we answer foolish arguments, we in turn become fools. when we knowingly drown in toxicity, even out of a desire for good, that is not noble. The Proverbs says that it is foolishness. When we engage with automated messages over and over and over again that just simply forever rob us of our energy and our time and our sanity, that is the opposite of wisdom. And so I think that this is where the proverb rings true, because it offers us a protective practice, choosing disengagement when the only outcome is harm. Harm to your peace, harm to your patience, and harm to your capacity to love. And for clarification, this is not a license for a sort of smug silence or a retreat into echo chambers. This is an act of stewardship. Because think about it. Your inner life has a finite bandwidth. And spending it on endless rebuttals, it leaves little left for the people who actually want to grow along beside you. And so stepping away is how you guard the soil where better conversations, compassionate, transformative conversations can still take root. And taken together, these 2 points of wisdom, they free us from the lie that every single invitation to conflict is a moral summons. Because some hills are worth climbing, but others are sinkholes wearing camouflage. But this does leave us with a difficult question. Because how do we tell the difference? How do we tell the difference between a debate that bears fruit and stretches us and a foolish argument that only leaves us exhausted? Proverbs 26:4 is crystal clear about what to avoid, but the proverb it's brief. And that's the trade-off with wisdom literature. We get a compass heading, but we don't get turn-by-turn directions, which means that the practical work of discernment, it falls to us. And depending on who you are, that might be a good thing or it might be a bad thing. Because some of us, we know ourselves really well. We know our body cues and mentally kind of the directions that we go. And so some of us are able to identify really well when a conversation is no longer fruitful. And some of us, myself included, can look a lot like Hollis shouting in the backseat of the minivan, getting sucked into automated conversations even without realizing it. And so for practical purposes, I want to share with you just really briefly what I do. This is my practice of some days I do it really well, some days I fall flat on my face, and some days it's kind of a combination, but it's the thing that I'm chasing after. I want to tell you how I practice Proverbs 26:4, and you're free to take this or leave it or use it as a combination of whatever you already have in your arsenal. Whenever I wade into conversations with peoples whose views clash with mine, I try to keep a lookout for two things. And here's the important part. I look for these two things in the other person, but just as crucially, I look for these two things in myself. Because remember, it takes two parties. And if I don't see it in the other person, or I don't see it in myself, then I need to be able to acknowledge that. The first thing that I look for in a conversation with someone whose views clash with mine, the first thing I look for is curiosity. Is curiosity present in the conversation that is happening? Because curiosity is the oxygen of fruitful dialogue. And so it sounds like genuine questions and follow-up clarifications and a willingness to say, tell me more about why you see things that way. When curiosity is present in the conversation, it signals to both parties that they still believe that there is something left to learn. But if you take curiosity away, well, the conversation collapses into sort of two parallel monologues running beside each other, with each monologue polishing their own certainty. And so I've found that a conversation without genuine curiosity just will not simply bear fruit. The second thing that I look for in the other person, but as well as myself, is I look for shared humanity. Do I sense that the other person recognizes my stories, my hopes, and my wounds as real? And do I recognize theirs? Or have we both sort of reduced each other to caricatures or symbols or stand-ins for whatever side or thing we oppose? Because if mutual personhood is not on the table in a conversation, wisdom tells us that that table is not worth sitting at. And so for me personally, when I see curiosity or shared humanity, either one of those things missing, I take that as my personal cue to step away or to find an exit. And that is not disdain, it's stewardship. It is a recognition that me as a human being, that my attention span and my emotional reserves and my capacity to love well are finite gifts on a day-to-day basis. And if I spend those gifts on barren ground, not only does it not produce fruit, but it robs those gifts from the people and the conversations that could actually grow and benefit from them. And so boundaries in that sense are not the opposite of compassion. They are what makes sustained compassion possible. Like I said, in your own life, I'm willing to bet that you have your own inner cues and gauges, little signals and conversations that tell you when a dialogue is either going to bloom and be fruitful or when it is withering on the vine. And so honestly, I would love to hear those things from you personally, but I would also encourage you to find ways to share them with each other, because we do this complex work together and we practice this wisdom together. But in closing, I would like to offer you this. In this current contentious season of life, to those of you who are still in the thick of fruitful debate, who are showing up with open questions and generous hearts in hard places, I pray for you endurance. In your life, may curiosity stay bright, may compassion stay persistent, and may your work for shared humanity, may it bear real, tangible fruit. Because we desperately need your steady voices if we are ever going to build a kinder world. And to those of you who feel threadbare after way too many foolish arguments, I pray for you rest. May you have the courage to step away, the permission to lay down what is toxic, and the grace to heal without guilt or without shame. And may God place something life-giving in the space that once occupied weariness. May you be given a new delight, a renewed purpose, and a deeper peace. May the Spirit grant all of us wisdom in these things for every word we choose to speak and every silence we choose to uphold. Amen.